Most people spend their whole lives dreaming of escaping to a deserted tropical island. One man actually did it. And then he did it again and again. His name was Tom Neale, and starting in the 1950s, he chose to live completely alone on a tiny, uninhabited coral atoll in the middle of the South Pacific, hundreds of miles from the nearest other human being. No phone, no rescue on call, no way out until a ship happened to pass. If most of us lasted a week out there, we consider it an achievement. But Tom Neale spent roughly 16 years of his life on that island, across 3 separate stays, and he insisted he was never once lonely. This is the story of the man who walked away from the world to live on an island once rumored to hold buried treasure, and found something there worth far more than gold. The man who couldn't settle. To understand why a man would choose total isolation, you first have to understand Tom Neale. He was born in 1902 in Wellington, New Zealand, an ordinary boy from an ordinary family. As a young man, he joined the New Zealand Navy, and that decision set the course of his entire life, because it sent him out into the vast scattered islands of the Pacific Ocean. For 4 years, he traveled through those islands on Navy ships, and something about them got into his blood. The warm water, the slow pace of life, the endless horizons. When his Navy service was up, he bought his way out so he could wander the Pacific on his own terms, free to go wherever he wanted. For the next few decades, that's exactly what he did. He drifted between islands, taking odd jobs, living simply. He spent years in Tahiti. Eventually, he found work as a relieving storekeeper in the Cook Islands, running small village shops while their regular keepers were away, moving from island to island. What's important to understand is that Neale was not running away from some tragedy or failure. He wasn't broke or heartbroken or hiding from the law. He was simply a man who felt more deeply than most people ever admit to themselves that the ordinary modern world was not built for him. The noise of towns, the press of crowds, the endless small obligations of civilized life, all of it sat wrong on him. He once said he chose the Pacific because life there moved at the pace he believed God had originally intended. He was, by his own account, restless. Civilization never quite fit him. He didn't crave money or status or a settled life with a white picket fence. He craved something quieter and harder to name. And then, one evening, a friend told him about a place that would consume the rest of his life, an almost mythical empty atoll called Suwarrow. The island of his dreams, the story, came from an author named Robert Dean Frisbee, who had actually lived on Suwarrow with his family and filled Neale's head with tales of it. Suwarrow was a true coral atoll, a ring of tiny low islands called motus, surrounding a wide central lagoon, sitting alone in the Pacific hundreds of miles from anywhere. It was uninhabited. During the Second World War, a small group of coast watchers had been stationed there to scan for enemy ships, leaving behind a few rough buildings on the main islet, which was called Anchorage. But once the war ended, they left, and Suwarrow returned to emptiness, far off any normal shipping route, visited by almost no one. And here's the detail that gives the island its mystique, and your title its name. Suwarrow had a reputation as a treasure island. Over the centuries, there were persistent legends and even documented discoveries of treasure buried in its sands, caches reportedly left behind by sailors and traders long ago. There was real history behind those legends too. Over the years, genuine caches of coins and valuables had reportedly been dug from Suwarrow sands, lending the place an air of romance that drew the occasional dreamer and adventurer. The very name carried weight among Pacific sailors, a speck of land tangled up with stories of pirates, castaways, and fortunes lost and found. But where others heard those stories and imagined digging up gold, Neale heard something different. He heard how empty the island was, how forgotten, how perfectly, completely his. To Neale, though, the real treasure was the solitude. From the moment he heard about it, he knew. This was the place. This was where he wanted to live, completely alone, with nothing but the sea and the sky in his own 2 hands. There was just one enormous problem. Almost no ships ever went there, and he had no way to get to the island of his dreams. The gamble that got him there, it took him 7 long years of waiting. 7 years of carrying that dream around while he worked his store, keeping jobs, hoping for a chance that almost never came. Then, in 1952, the chance finally appeared. An acquaintance of his owned a trading ship that would be passing near Suwarrow, and he made Neale an offer. For £30, he would divert the ship and drop Neale off on the atoll. Neale had just £79 to his name, his entire life savings. Without hesitating, he said yes. It was a staggering gamble. He was about to spend nearly half of everything he owned to be marooned, by choice, on an empty island with no scheduled way back. And he had only 2 weeks to prepare for an indefinite stay in the middle of nowhere. He threw himself into it, making careful lists and stockpiling supplies with his remaining money, around £49. He bought large quantities of flour, sugar, kerosene, and coffee. He bought tools and seeds to plant a garden, and crucially, a large supply of books to keep his mind alive. As word spread around Rarotonga about his strange plan, villagers offered him gifts. Several women even offered to come with him and share the adventure. He politely turned every one of them down. This was something he needed to do alone. And so, with his supplies and a couple of cats for company, Tom Neale finally sailed to the island he had dreamed about for 7 years. Arriving in paradise when the ship dropped him on anchorage and sailed away, Tom Neale got his first real taste of what he had chosen. The island was beautiful beyond words, but it was also a mess. The buildings the wartime coast watchers had left behind were weathered and damaged, half reclaimed by the relentless tropical growth. If Neale was going to live here, he would have to build his life almost from scratch. And rather than being daunted, he was thrilled. This was the entire point. He set to work immediately, repairing the main shack into a livable home clearing ground, and beginning the endless labor of turning an abandoned outpost into a one-man kingdom. He planted a garden with the seeds he brought. He dealt with the wild pigs that roamed the island, descendants of animals left by earlier visitors, which threatened his crops. He built a chicken coop. He learned the rhythm of the place, where to fish in the lagoon, how to harvest coconuts, how to bake bread by wrapping his dough in banana leaves. The work was relentless, and that was exactly how he wanted it. There was no idle lounging in a hammock here. Every single day brought a list of tasks that had to be done simply to stay alive and comfortable. Gathering food, hauling water, mending what the weather broke, guarding his garden from the pigs and the salt and the sun. He repaired the old wartime water tanks so he could catch rain. He learned which fish in the lagoon were safe and which were not. Each small victory, a successful harvest, a sturdy repair, a full belly, carried a satisfaction that no office job had ever given him. He fell into a daily routine that he would later describe with obvious love. His morning work, his afternoon cup of tea, his long walks along the empty beach as the sun went down. He had no one to talk to but his cats. And according to everything he ever wrote and said, he was profoundly, completely happy. But the island was not done testing him, and it was about to nearly kill him. The injury that almost ended everything. The greatest danger of living utterly alone is not loneliness, or storms, or hunger. It's the simple accident that anywhere else would be nothing, but out here, with no one to help, can become a death sentence. In May of 1954, after Neale had been on the island for nearly 2 years, that nightmare arrived. He was handling his boat when he threw the anchor and felt something tear in his back. The pain was instant and crippling. He had badly injured his spine, and suddenly this strong, capable man could barely move. He was on the opposite side of the atoll from his hut, and getting back to shelter was an agony that took everything he had. Once there, he collapsed, semi-paralyzed, and lay there, helpless, for 4 days. Those 4 days are the heart of what made Neale's choice so dangerous and so brave. He had no radio to call for help, no neighbor to hear him cry out, no painkiller stronger than willpower. He could only lie in the dirt and wait, rationing whatever was within arm's reach, listening to the same waves that had sounded so peaceful, now mocking him with their indifference. He genuinely believed he might die there, and he later admitted that in those long hours, he understood for the first time the true price of the freedom he had chosen. Total independence and total vulnerability, he learned, are the same thing. Think about how precarious that is. A man alone on an uninhabited island, unable to stand, unable to gather food or water properly, with no one in the world who even knew he needed help. He could very easily have died right there, slowly, with no one ever knowing. But Suwarrow, for all its remoteness, occasionally sent a ship. And in an extraordinary stroke of luck, a couple arrived at the atoll on their yacht, not even knowing that anyone lived there. They discovered Neale in terrible pain and nursed him back to a functioning state. They got word to the Cook Islands government, and a couple of weeks later, a ship came and took him back to civilization. His first stay was over, ended not by loneliness, but by his own body. The pull of the island now here is the part that reveals who Tom Neale really was. Because most people, having nearly died alone on a remote island, would count their blessings and never go back. Neale couldn't stop thinking about it. Back in the inhabited world, he found that ordinary life had lost its flavor. He had tasted something on Suwarrow that he could not find anywhere else, and the island called to him constantly. In the years that followed, his life did take some conventional turns. In 1956, he married a woman in Rarotonga, and they had 2 children, a son and a daughter. He had a family now, a life, responsibilities. By all the normal measures, he had every reason to stay. But the island never let go of him. 6 long, frustrating years passed, and the craving to return only grew stronger. Then, in 1960, a friend with a small boat offered to take him back, and Neale went. He returned to Suwarrow for a second stay, this one lasting about 2.5 years, picking up the solitary life he loved as if he had never left. He rebuilt, replanted, and settled back into his perfect routine of work and tea and walks on the beach. It was during these first 2 stays that he gathered the material for the thing that would make him famous. The book that made him a legend, Tom Neale, was not just living an extraordinary life, he was documenting it. And when he finally wrote it all down, it turned a quiet hermit into an international sensation. With the help of a journalist named Noel Barber, Neale wrote an autobiography about his life alone on Suwarrow, covering his first 2 stays. He called it An Island to Oneself. When it was published, it struck a deep nerve with readers around the world, because it spoke directly to a fantasy almost everyone has secretly held, the dream of dropping out of the rat race, of leaving every bill and obligation and crowd behind, and simply living in peace on a tropical island. Neale had actually done it, and he wrote about it with such warmth, honesty, and detail that readers were captivated. He described it all: the terror of that hurricane that once engulfed his tiny islet, the 5 desperate hours he once spent fighting a storm in the lagoon with his ruined back, but also the gentle joys, building his chicken coop, the simple pleasure of a single sip of brandy, the quiet delight of taming a wild duck. What made the book endure was its honesty. Neale never pretended to be a flawless wilderness Superman, and he never sugarcoated the hardship to sell a fantasy. He wrote about the boredom as well as the beauty, the failures alongside the triumphs, the bone-deep exhaustion of doing everything yourself with no one to share the load. Readers trusted him because he told the truth, and the truth was more compelling than any invention. He had taken the most universal daydream in the world and reported back from the other side of it, telling everyone exactly what it actually cost and exactly what it was worth. The book became a bestseller. And it did something practical too. The money it earned allowed Neale to fund a much bigger, better-stocked final stay on the island. He had turned his solitude into a story, and that story was about to buy him a return ticket to the only place he ever truly wanted to be. The final return in June of 1967. At the age of 65, an age when most men are easing into a quiet retirement, Tom Neale went back to Suwarrow for the 3rd and final time. This stay would be the longest of all. He remained on his island for 10 straight years. This was the life he had always wanted, lived to its fullest, a decade of self-sufficient solitude in his Pacific paradise. He was older now, but he knew the island intimately, every reef and tree and patch of garden, and he settled into its rhythms with the ease of a man who was finally completely home. His family life had largely come apart by this point, the distance in his nature making an ordinary marriage impossible. But on Suwarrow, Neale was at peace. His daughter even visited him on the island, a rare bridge between his two worlds. And throughout all of it, across all 3 stays totaling roughly 16 years, Neale held firm to one remarkable claim. He said he never felt lonely. The only times he ever wished for company, he wrote, were not because he wanted another person, but because the beauty around him was sometimes so overwhelming, so perfect, that he simply wished there was someone to share the sight of it. That was the closest this solitary man ever came to loneliness. The ache of seeing something too beautiful to witness alone. The end of the hermit Tom Neale's time on the island finally ended the same way his first stay had, with his own body betraying him, though this time there would be no recovery. In 1977, after a decade of his final stay, a visiting yacht found Neale seriously ill. He was suffering from stomach cancer. He was evacuated from his beloved Suwarrow for the last time and taken to a hospital in Rarotonga. He died 8 months later, on the 30th of November 1977, at the age of 75. He was buried in a cemetery on Rarotonga, far from the lonely atoll where he had spent the happiest years of his life. But his story did not die with him. The year after his death, in 1978, the Cook Islands government designated Suwarrow Atoll a national park, preserving the wild paradise he had loved. A friend of his, a famous French sailor, built a monument to him on Anchorage Island, the very spot where he had lived. To this day, the island is cared for by a caretaker and family, and sailors who make the long, remote journey to Suwarrow still seek out Tom Neale's old shack and the bust of him on the trail, paying their respects to the hermit who made this empty atoll the most famous deserted island in the Pacific. So that is the story of Tom Neale, the man who didn't survive a deserted island by accident, but chose it again and again for 16 years of his life. He gave up money, comfort, and easy company for hurricanes, isolation, and a back injury that nearly killed him. But in return, he got something most people search for their entire lives and never find: the certainty that he was living exactly the life he was meant to live. He proved a desert island could be a paradise. And then he wrote the book that let millions of us dream the same dream from our armchairs. If you enjoyed this story, like the video and subscribe for more incredible tales from history.